2 years had passed since the day Maya pulled a drowning alien child from the Jara River, and the ripple effects of that moment continued to spread across the galaxy. What had begun as a single act of compassion had grown into the foundation of the first successful interspecies civilization in human history. Maya stood before the newly completed monument of first contact, a living sculpture that had been grown jointly by human and Zephany bioengineers. The crystalline structure reached toward the twin suns of Kepler 442b, its faceted surfaces telling the story of integration through patterns of light that shifted with the time of day. At its base, water flowed in a gentle cascade that reminded visitors of the river where everything had begun. Today marked the second anniversary of first contact, and representatives from both Earth and the Greater Zephany Confederation had come to New Eden to witness the signing of the Kepler Accords. The formal treaty would establish the legal framework for interspecies cooperation and serve as a template for future contact situations throughout human space. Sylvesh, now a confident adolescent whose fur had developed the complex patterns that indicated approaching adulthood, stood beside Maya as they watched the ceremony preparations. The young Zephany had become a symbol of hope for both species, proof that the barriers between different forms of life could be overcome through understanding and mutual respect. "Are you nervous?" Sylvesh asked through their telepathic link, its mental voice carrying undertones of concern for Maya's emotional state. Maya smiled and reached down to stroke her friend's iridescent fur. "A little," she admitted. "It's strange to think that something I did without thinking would end up being recorded in history books." "You didn't act without thinking," Sylvesh corrected gently. "You acted from your heart, which is the same thing. That's why it mattered." The ceremony plaza was filled with beings from across the galaxy. The Earth delegation included diplomats, scientists, and media representatives who had traveled 3 years to witness this historic moment. The Zephany Confederation had sent elders from their most ancient communities, beings whose experience spanned centuries of peaceful development. But most importantly, the plaza was filled with the everyday citizens of New Eden, humans and Zephany, who had chosen to build their lives together in this unprecedented community. Children of both species played together in the crystal gardens, while their parents collaborated on projects that would have been impossible for either civilization alone. Kefra approached Maya and Sylvesh, its diplomatic robes displaying formal patterns of gold and silver. Maya's first alien friend had become the official Zephany ambassador to human space, a role that would soon take it to Earth itself to establish formal relations with humanity's home government. "The Earth delegation wants to meet with you before the signing," Kefra informed Maya. Ambassador Williams specifically requested a private audience with the person who initiated first contact. Maya felt a familiar flutter of anxiety. She had given dozens of interviews and formal statements over the past 2 years, but she still wasn't comfortable with the attention. She was a xenobiologist who had become an accidental diplomat, and sometimes the weight of that responsibility felt overwhelming. "Remember," Sylvesh said, sensing Maya's emotional state, "you don't represent just yourself anymore. You represent the idea that different species can care for each other." The meeting with Ambassador Williams took place in the Integration Center's formal conference room, a space that perfectly embodied the fusion of human and Zephany design principles. The walls were living biomembrane that provided natural illumination and air purification, while the furniture followed human ergonomic principles enhanced by Zephany biotechnology. Ambassador Williams was a veteran diplomat who had spent decades managing complex international relations on Earth, but Maya could see the amazement in his eyes as he took in the alien environment around him. His aide, Dr. Patricia Sanchez, was frantically documenting everything with various recording devices. "Dr. Chen," Williams began formally, "on behalf of the Earth Council, I want to thank you for your extraordinary service to humanity. Your actions have opened possibilities that we're only beginning to understand." Maya accepted the formal thanks graciously, but she could tell that Williams had more substantial concerns on his mind. The political implications of the Zephany alliance were staggering, and Earth's leaders were still grappling with how to manage a situation that had developed far from their direct control. "I have to ask," Williams continued, "how confident are you in the stability of this alliance? Earth is committing significant resources to support the integration program, and we need to know that we're building on solid foundations. Through the transparent walls of the conference room, Maya could see human and Zephany families going about their daily lives in perfect harmony. Children of both species attended the same schools. Adults collaborated on projects that benefited the entire community, and the elderly of both civilizations shared wisdom that enriched everyone. "Ambassador," Maya said carefully, "I can't predict the future any more than you can, but I can tell you that this alliance wasn't built on political agreements or economic interests. It was built on personal relationships between individuals who chose to trust each other, despite their differences." She gestured toward the plaza where the ceremony preparations continued. "Every person out there, human and Zephany alike, has made a personal choice to be part of something larger than their own species. That kind of commitment doesn't disappear when political winds change." Dr. Sanchez leaned forward with obvious curiosity. "What about the practical challenges? Cultural differences? Biological incompatibilities? Communication barriers?" Maya couldn't help but smile at the question. "Dr. Sanchez, 2 years ago I couldn't even pronounce Zephany names correctly, and now I'm conducting complex negotiations through telepathic links. The practical challenges are real, but they're not insurmountable when both sides are committed to finding solutions." The conversation continued for another hour, covering everything from resource allocation to legal frameworks for interspecies dispute resolution. Through it all, Maya found herself returning to the same fundamental truth. The success of the alliance depended not on perfect systems, but on the willingness of individuals to treat each other with respect and compassion. As the formal ceremony began, Maya took her place on the platform alongside the other key figures in the integration process. Governor Hassan represented human colonial administration, while Elder Veshka spoke for the Zephany Confederation. Kefra would serve as the primary witness for the Zephany, while Maya had been chosen to represent the personal relationships that had made everything possible. The signing of the Kepler Accords was broadcast live to Earth and transmitted throughout Zephany space, marking the formal beginning of the first interspecies civilization in known history. But for Maya, the most meaningful moment came when Silvesh was invited to place its paw print beside the formal signatures, representing the future that both species were building together. As the ceremony concluded and the celebration began, Maya found herself thinking about the river where everything had started. She had been collecting water samples that day, analyzing the chemical composition of an alien world. She never could have imagined that the most important discovery wouldn't be found in a laboratory, but in the simple decision to help a frightened child. Silvesh appeared at her side, now nearly as tall as Maya herself, its adult patterns beginning to show the deep purples and silvers that indicated a calling toward diplomacy and interspecies relations. "What are you thinking about?" the young Zephany asked, its telepathic voice warm with affection. "The future," Maya replied honestly. "All the other worlds out there, all the other species we haven't met yet. If we can make this work, maybe we can show them that cooperation is possible." Silvesh's response came not in words, but in a flood of shared emotion, hope, determination, and absolute confidence in the path they had chosen together. Maya felt that familiar warmth of telepathic connection, but now it carried something more. Through Silvesh, she could sense the collective hope of both species, the shared dream of a future where difference was celebrated rather than feared. The twin suns of Kepler 442b were setting, casting the celebration in the warm amber light that had become so familiar to the human colonists. Tomorrow would bring new challenges as the integration program expanded to other worlds and other species. But tonight, under alien stars, two civilizations celebrated the proof that kindness could bridge any gap, and that the simple act of helping a stranger could change the course of history itself. 6 months after first contact, New Eden had transformed into something that neither species could have imagined alone. The original human settlement now existed in harmony with Zephany biostructures that seemed to have grown from the Earth itself. Living buildings pulsed gently with bioluminescent patterns, while hybrid gardens produced crops that thrived in Kepler 442b's unique environment. Maya stood on the observation deck of the new integration center, a marvel of combined human engineering and Zephany biotechnology. Through the transparent biomembrane walls, she could see human children playing alongside young Zephany in playgrounds that seemed to have been carved from living crystal. The sight never failed to amaze her, even after months of witnessing the impossible become routine. Silvesh, now significantly larger but still devoted to Maya, pressed against her side as they watched the activity below. The young Zafani had become something of a celebrity in the integrated community, with both human and Zafani children seeking its friendship. Through their strengthened telepathic bond, Maya could sense Silvesh's contentment and pride in the role it had played in bringing the two species together. "The morning reports are encouraging," Kefra said, approaching with a bio-tablet that displayed information in both human text and Zafani color patterns. Maya's friend and diplomatic partner had become fluent in spoken English, while Maya had developed surprising skill with Zafani telepathic communication. The reports detailed the success of their integration efforts. Crop yields had increased by 300% thanks to Zafani agricultural symbiosis. Energy problems had been eliminated through living power systems that drew from the planet's natural electromagnetic fields. Most importantly, both populations were thriving, with human and Zafani families choosing to live in mixed communities. "Any word from Earth?" Maya asked, though she suspected she knew the answer. Communication with their home planet was limited to periodic data bursts that took months to reach their destination and just as long for responses to return. "Dr. Chen received confirmation this morning," Kefra replied, its fur displaying patterns that Maya had learned indicated satisfaction mixed with amusement. "The Earth Council has officially recognized our alliance and approved the establishment of the first interspecies colony. They're sending additional colonists on the next transport, along with scientists who want to study our integration methods." Maya smiled at the news, though she felt a familiar pang of anxiety about the future. The success of New Eden had exceeded everyone's expectations, but it had also created new challenges. Not all humans were as adaptable as the original colonists, and not all Zafani were as progressive as Kefra's family group. "Speaking of challenges," Maya said, pulling up a report on her own device, "we need to discuss the Traditionalist faction's latest petition." The Traditionalists were a group of Zafani who believed that integration with humans was moving too quickly. They weren't hostile to cooperation, but they wanted clearer boundaries between the species and more time to evaluate the long-term consequences of their alliance. Their concerns weren't entirely unreasonable, but they had been gaining support among some of the more conservative Zafani communities. "Elder Veshka has requested another meeting with the Integration Council," Kefra explained. "The Traditionalists want to establish preserve zones where Zafani can maintain their original lifestyle without human influence." Maya understood their concerns. Even positive change could be overwhelming, and the Zafani had maintained their stable civilization for thousands of years. The rapid transformation of the last 6 months represented more change than they had experienced in centuries. "What does the council think about the proposal?" Maya asked, referring to the joint governing body that had been established to manage interspecies relations.
"Governor Hassan supports it, actually," Kefra replied. "He believes that preserving traditional Zafani culture is essential for maintaining the diversity that makes our alliance strong. Some human colonists have expressed similar desires
for spaces where they can maintain Earth customs without adaptation pressure." The conversation was interrupted by excited chittering from Silvesh, whose attention had been caught by something happening in the plaza below. Maya looked down to see a group of human and Zafani engineers working together on what appeared to be a new construction project. What made the scene remarkable wasn't just the interspecies cooperation, but the nature of what they were building. The structure seemed to be growing from the ground up, its organic walls shaped by Zafani biotechnology, but incorporating human architectural principles. It was something entirely new, a fusion of both civilizations that belonged fully to neither. "The new school?" Maya asked, recognizing the project from previous briefings. "The first building designed specifically for interspecies education," Kefra confirmed, its fur patterns shifting to display pride and excitement. "Human children will learn Zafani ecological science while Zafani young ones study human technological innovation. It's completely experimental, but the preliminary results from our pilot programs have been extraordinary." Maya watched as a human child showed a young Zafani how to operate a tablet computer, while the alien demonstrated how to communicate with the living vines that were helping to construct the building's walls. The natural curiosity and adaptability of both species' children had made them the most successful ambassadors for integration. "I have something to show you," Kefra said, leading Maya toward a secured section of the integration center. "The council approved the project yesterday, but you're the first human to see it." They entered a chamber that took Maya's breath away. The room was filled with a complex structure that seemed part computer, part artwork, and part living organism. Crystalline formations grew from a base of what looked like coral, while streams of light flowed through transparent tubes that pulsed with their own heartbeat. "It's a memory archive," Kefra explained, noticing Maya's amazement. "We're recording everything about this period of integration, not just facts and dates, but the actual experiences and emotions of individuals from both species. Future generations will be able to understand exactly what it was like to live through the birth of the first interspecies civilization." Maya approached the archive carefully, drawn by its alien beauty. As she came closer, she could sense something familiar in the flowing patterns of light. "There's something about me in there, isn't there?" Kefra's fur displayed patterns of gentle affection. "Your rescue of Silvesh is the foundational memory, the moment that made everything else possible. But more than that, we're recording your ongoing experiences as the first human to truly bridge our species." The responsibility felt overwhelming. But as Maya looked at the magnificent archive, she realized that it wasn't just about her anymore. The integration of human and Zephany civilization had created something larger than either species could achieve alone, and that achievement belonged to everyone who had chosen cooperation over fear. Silvesh moved to Maya's side and gently touched its paw to her hand. Through their telepathic bond, Maya felt the young Zephany's absolute confidence in the future they were building together. To Silvesh, the integration wasn't an experimental alliance between alien species. It was simply home, the natural state, of a world where different kinds of people chose to help each other. As they left the archive chamber, Maya reflected on how much had changed since that morning when she had heard a frightened cry from the river. Her simple decision to help a drowning child had grown into something that would reshape the future of two civilizations, proving that the most important moments in history often begin with basic acts of kindness between strangers. The future would bring new challenges as more humans arrived, and the integration expanded beyond New Eden. But Maya felt confident that they had built something strong enough to endure. They had proven that different species could not only coexist, but create something beautiful together, and that foundation would support whatever came next. Maya spent 3 days in the Zephany city, and each hour revealed new wonders that challenged everything she thought she knew about technology and civilization. The Zephany had assigned her a guide, a young adult named Kefra whose fur displayed patterns of green and gold. Through patient telepathic exchanges, Kefra helped Maya understand the basics of Zephany society while learning about human culture in return. The Zephany approach to technology fascinated Maya. Instead of building machines, they cultivated them. Their computers were living organisms that had been bred over generations to process information and store data. Their vehicles were creatures that had evolved to carry passengers through the forest canopy with perfect efficiency. Even their buildings were alive, growing and adapting to the needs of their inhabitants. What impressed Maya most was how sustainable everything was. The Zephany had achieved a level of technological advancement that rivaled human capabilities in many areas, but their civilization produced no waste, consumed no irreplaceable resources, and actually improved their environment rather than degrading it. They had solved problems that human scientists were still struggling to understand. On the morning of her 4th day with the Zephany, Maya woke in the comfortable chamber they had provided for her to find the cub waiting outside her door. The young alien had appointed itself as her constant companion, and Maya had grown deeply attached to the curious and affectionate creature. Through their strengthening telepathic bond, she had learned that its name was something like Silvesh, though the concept included emotional overtones that had no human equivalent. Silvesh was excited about something, and kept making urgent sounds while projecting images of the path back toward human territory. Maya understood immediately. It was time for her to return to the colony, but she wouldn't be going alone. Kefra appeared a few minutes later, carrying what looked like a living backpack that pulsed gently with bioluminescent patterns. Through telepathic contact, the young Zephany explained that this was a communication device, a symbiotic organism that would allow Maya to maintain contact with the Zephany even when she was back in human territory. More importantly, Kefra would be coming with her. The council had decided that formal contact required a Zephany representative to accompany Maya back to the human settlement. Kefra had volunteered for this historic mission, driven by curiosity about human civilization and confidence in Maya's character. The journey back to New Eden took most of the day, with frequent stops as Kefra examined human artifacts and infrastructure with scientific fascination. Maya's cabin was the first human structure the young Zephany had seen up close, and its crude construction compared to Zephany bioarchitecture seemed to both amuse and concern their visitor. "We build with dead materials," Maya explained through their telepathic link, trying to convey concepts that had no equivalent in Zephany experience. "We shape metal and stone instead of growing living structures." Kefra's response carried undertones of bewilderment and sympathy. To the Zephany, building with dead materials was like trying to create art using only broken pieces. It could work, but it would never achieve the harmony and efficiency possible with living systems. As they approached New Eden's perimeter, Maya felt her anxiety growing. She was about to return to human civilization, accompanied by two aliens carrying news that would revolutionize everything the colonists thought they knew about their new world. The weight of responsibility was crushing. The colony's automated sensors detected her approach and transmitted the standard welcome message, but Maya could see security personnel moving to investigate the unusual biosignatures her companions were certainly generating. She activated her emergency communicator and requested immediate contact with Governor Hassan, the colony's senior administrator. "Maya, thank God you're safe." Hassan's voice crackled through the communicator. "You've been missing for 4 days. We were about to launch a search and rescue operation." "Governor, I need to speak with you immediately," Maya replied, watching as Kefra and Silvesh took in their first sight of human civilization. "I have important information about the planet and I'm not alone." The silence that followed stretched for several uncomfortable seconds. "What do you mean, not alone?" "I've made contact with the native intelligent species," Maya said, the words feeling surreal even as she spoke them. "I'm bringing representatives back to the colony for formal first contact." Maya could practically hear Hassan's worldview reshaping itself through the communicator. As the colony's governor, he had been briefed on first contact protocols, but no one had expected to actually need them. The surveys had found no evidence of intelligent life on Kepler 442b. "Maya, you need to proceed directly to the administrative complex," Hassan said finally, his voice carefully controlled. "Do not interact with any other colonists until we can properly assess the situation." "Understood, Governor. But sir, you should know that these beings have been watching us since we arrived. They're highly advanced and could have contacted us at any time. The fact that they're choosing to reveal themselves now is a sign of trust we need to handle very carefully." Maya disconnected the communicator and turned to her companions. Through telepathic contact, she explained what was about to happen and prepared them for their first encounter with human authority figures. Kefra radiated calm confidence, but Silvesh pressed closer to Maya, clearly nervous about meeting more humans. The administrative complex sat at the heart of New Eden, a cluster of prefabricated buildings that had been assembled during the colony's first year. Compared to the organic beauty of the Zephany city, it looked stark and utilitarian. But Maya felt a surge of pride in what humans had accomplished in such a short time on an alien world. Governor Hassan waited for them at the main entrance, flanked by Dr. Sarah Chen, the colony's chief scientist, and Captain Rodriguez, head of security. Maya could see the barely controlled excitement and anxiety on their faces as they caught their first glimpse of Kefra and Silvesh. Hassan was a veteran administrator who had helped establish 3 previous colonies, but Maya could tell that nothing in his experience had prepared him for this moment. Dr. Chen's scientific curiosity was warring with her caution, while Captain Rodriguez maintained a professional demeanor that couldn't quite hide his amazement. "Governor Hassan," Maya said formally, "I'd like you to meet Kefra of the Zephany, and Silvesh, who is the individual I rescued from drowning. They've come to establish formal diplomatic contact between our species." Kefra stepped forward gracefully and made a gesture that Maya had learned was a formal greeting among the Zafani. The young alien's fur shifted to display patterns of blue and silver, which Maya knew indicated peaceful intentions and respect for authority. Hassan, to his credit, recovered from his shock quickly and returned the gesture as best he could. "Welcome to New Eden," he said carefully. "We're honored by your presence." Maya felt a warm pulse of approval from Kefra at Hassan's respectful tone. Through their telepathic link, the Zephany was sharing observations about human body language, vocal patterns, and the obvious hierarchy displayed by the group's formation. "Perhaps we should continue this conversation inside," Dr. Chen suggested, her eyes never leaving their alien visitors. "There are protocols we need to follow for first contact situations." As they moved into the administrative building, Maya noticed colonists stopping their daily activities to stare at the unprecedented sight. Word would spread quickly through the small community, and by evening everyone would know that they were no longer alone on Kepler 442b. In the main conference room, Hassan activated the recording systems and began the formal first contact documentation that would eventually be transmitted back to Earth. Maya served as translator, using her developing telepathic abilities to facilitate communication between Kefra and the human officials. What emerged from the initial discussions amazed everyone present. The Zephany had been aware of human arrival from the beginning and had been conducting detailed observations of the colony. They knew about the struggles with crop failures, the equipment breakdowns, and the growing supply shortages that were threatening the settlement's survival. More importantly, they were prepared to help. Kefra explained that the Zephany had solutions to many of the problems plaguing New Eden. Their biotechnology could provide sustainable food sources perfectly adapted to the planet's environment. Their living buildings could expand to accommodate the colony's growing population without requiring materials from Earth. Their symbiotic organisms could serve as biological computers, more reliable than human electronics in the planet's unique electromagnetic environment. "Why?" Dr. Chen asked, her scientific skepticism warring with hope.
"Why would you help us when we're essentially invaders of your world?"
Kefra's response came through Maya's translation, but the emotion behind it was clear even to the humans who couldn't sense the telepathic undertones. The Zephany had learned from their previous encounter with alien visitors that isolation wasn't sustainable. If they were going to share their world with humans, it was better to ensure that the relationship was cooperative rather than competitive. But more than that, Maya's actions had demonstrated that humans were capable of growth and compassion. The interior of the great tree defied every assumption Maya had about architecture and engineering. The walls curved organically, glowing with soft bioluminescence that provided gentle illumination throughout the vast space. The floor beneath her feet felt warm and slightly yielding, as if she were walking on living tissue rather than constructed material. As they ascended through the spiral passages, Maya caught glimpses of chambers filled with technology that blurred the line between biological and mechanical. She saw devices that pulsed with their own heartbeats, screens that seemed to be made of living membrane, and what appeared to be data storage systems that looked more like coral gardens than computer banks. The cub had grown more excited as they climbed, making soft musical sounds that were answered by other young voices from chambers they passed. Maya realized this wasn't just a government building. It was a community center where families lived and worked together. The integration of their society was so complete that the idea of separating work, governance, and daily life seemed foreign to them. When they finally reached the council chamber, Maya found herself in a circular room with a domed ceiling that appeared to be transparent. Through it, she could see the canopy of the crystal forest stretching in all directions. The twin suns filtering down through the prismatic leaves to create constantly shifting patterns of light and color. 7 adult aliens sat in a circle on what looked like natural stone formations, but Maya suspected were actually grown specifically for this purpose. Each displayed unique color patterns in their fur, and their ages seemed to vary considerably. The youngest appeared to be about the same age as the cub's parent, while the eldest showed silver streaks that gave its coat an almost metallic sheen. The parent who had brought Maya here approached the council and began what was clearly a formal presentation. Maya couldn't understand the musical language they used for spoken communication, but she caught fragments of emotion and imagery through the telepathic undertones that seemed to accompany their speech. She saw herself again through their eyes, diving into the river, caring for the cub, and making the decision to return it to its family despite the risks to herself. But she also sensed deeper analysis, evaluations of her character, her species, and the implications of formal contact between their civilizations. The eldest council member, whose silver-streaked fur seemed to shimmer with its own inner light, gestured for Maya to approach. When she stepped forward, the ancient alien studied her with eyes that held depths of wisdom she could barely comprehend. The mental contact, when it came, was unlike anything she had experienced before. Instead of images or emotions, Maya felt concepts being placed directly into her mind, ideas too complex for her human language to fully express, but which she somehow understood perfectly. She learned that these beings called themselves the Zephani, and that they had evolved on Kepler 442b over millions of years. Their civilization was ancient beyond human comprehension, but it had developed along paths completely different from human technological progress. Instead of conquering their environment, they had learned to partner with it, creating technology that enhanced and protected the natural world rather than replacing it. The Elder showed Maya glimpses of their history, and of peaceful development punctuated by only one great tragedy. Thousands of years ago, another alien species had arrived on their world, beings who sought to exploit rather than coexist. The resulting conflict had nearly destroyed both civilizations, teaching the Zephani to be cautious about contact with other species. When humans had arrived 3 years ago, the Zephani had watched with growing concern. Human technology seemed similar to that of the previous invaders, focused on reshaping the environment rather than adapting to it. Many Zephani believed that contact would inevitably lead to conflict and destruction, but others argued that humans showed signs of being different. They had established only one settlement and seemed more interested in study than conquest. The debate had raged for years, with the council unable to reach consensus about whether to reveal themselves or remain hidden. Maya's rescue of the cub had provided the evidence that the pro-contact faction needed. Here was proof that humans could value Zephani life, that they were capable of selfless action even for beings they didn't understand. The Elder was showing Maya that her simple act of compassion had become the turning point in a debate that would determine the future of both species. The mental contact ended, leaving Maya reeling from the implications of what she had learned. She was not just a xenobiologist who had made an interesting discovery. She was potentially the first human ambassador to an ancient alien civilization, and her actions would influence whether that relationship began with trust or suspicion. The council members began to discuss among themselves, their musical voices rising and falling in complex harmonies. Maya caught fragments of their telepathic exchanges, sensing the weight of the decision they were making. Some still harbored doubts about human intentions, while others argued that the time for hiding was over. The cub, who had been quietly staying close to its parent throughout the proceedings, suddenly moved to Maya's side. It looked up at her with those brilliant violet eyes and then at the council members, making a sound that was clearly meant to be a statement or argument. Maya felt a surge of emotion from the young alien, not directed at her but broadcast to the entire council. The cub was sharing its experiences with her, not just the rescue but everything that had happened afterward. It showed them how gently Maya had cared for it, how she had tried to feed it and keep it safe, and most importantly, how she had made the decision to return it to its family despite the personal risk. The youngest council member, whose fur showed patterns similar to the cub's parent, responded first. Maya sensed approval and growing confidence from this individual, someone who had apparently been advocating for contact all along. Other members began to join the discussion, their attitudes shifting as they considered the cub's testimony. Finally, the eldest member called for silence. The ancient Zephani looked directly at Maya and extended one delicate paw toward her. Maya understood the gesture and carefully reached out to touch the offered appendage. What came through the contact was not images or concepts, but pure emotion, trust, hope, and a decision that would echo through history. The council had chosen to trust humans, to believe that Maya's actions represented the best of her species rather than an exception. The Elder withdrew its paw and made a formal announcement to the council. While Maya couldn't understand the words, she felt the weight of the moment. First contact had been officially established, and she had been chosen as the initial bridge between their civilizations. But the Elder wasn't finished. Through a final brief contact, it showed Maya one more thing. Images of the human colony, viewed from Zephani observers who had been watching from the forest. The settlement was small and seemed almost fragile compared to the vast wilderness around it. But the Elder was showing her something specific. The humans were struggling. Maya saw drought conditions affecting their crops, equipment failures that their limited resources couldn't easily repair, and growing tension as supplies from Earth became increasingly unreliable. The Zephani had been aware of these problems, and some council members had even argued for offering assistance. The message was clear. The Zephani were not just willing to make contact, they were prepared to help. Maya's act of kindness toward one alien child had potentially saved the entire human colony, though she was only beginning to understand the magnitude of what she had set in motion. As the formal council session ended, Maya found herself surrounded by curious Zephani who had been waiting outside the chamber. Young ones pressed close to examine this strange alien, who had proven herself worthy of trust, while adults offered what she could only interpret as gestures of welcome and acceptance. The cub stayed by her side throughout it all, its presence a constant reminder that the most important relationships often begin with simple kindness between individuals, regardless of the vast differences that might separate their species. The forest fell silent except for the gentle chiming of wind through the crystal trees. Maya stood frozen, her hand resting protectively on the cub's back as the alien calls echoed around them. The small creature pressed against her leg, no longer eager to rush forward but somehow sensing the gravity of the moment. Then they appeared. Maya's breath caught as three figures emerged from behind the largest trees. They moved with liquid grace, their bodies flowing rather than walking across the forest floor. They were clearly the same species as the cub, but fully grown, each about the size of a large dog but with an elegance that made them seem larger. Their iridescent fur shifted through deeper colors than the cub's, displaying patterns that Maya now realized must indicate age, status, or individual identity. The largest of the three, whose fur showed bands of deep blue and silver, stepped forward first. Its violet eyes, so much like the cub's but ancient with wisdom, fixed on Maya with an intensity that made her feel completely transparent. She had the overwhelming sensation that this being was reading her soul, examining every motivation and intention. Maya slowly knelt, bringing herself closer to the cub's level, and gently nudged the small creature forward. "I brought your child home," she said softly, though she doubted they could understand her words. The moment the cub took its first step toward its family, the dam of emotion broke. The large adult rushed forward, and the reunion that followed brought tears to Maya's eyes. The adult creature nuzzled and examined the cub with obvious parental concern, making soft sounds that Maya could only interpret as worried questions about the youngster's health and well-being. The other two adults approached more cautiously, but their relief was palpable. Maya felt waves of emotion through the telepathic connection the cub had opened, though these were more complex and controlled than the simple feelings she had shared with the young one. She sensed gratitude but also curiosity, wariness, and something that might have been hope. The large adult, clearly the cub's parent, finished its examination and looked directly at Maya. When their eyes met, Maya felt the full force of an adult alien intelligence touching her mind. It was overwhelming, like standing before an ocean compared to the gentle stream of connection she had shared with the cub. Images flooded her consciousness, but these were different from the cub's simple communications. She saw herself from yesterday, diving into the river without hesitation to save a creature she had never seen before. She felt the parents' terror as they had watched their child swept away by the current, and their amazement as this strange alien being risked its own life for their offspring. But there was more. Maya saw glimpses of their society, a civilization that lived in harmony with the crystal forest. She saw structures grown rather than built, technology that seemed to merge biology with engineering in ways human science had never imagined. She saw other aliens like these, hundreds of them living in communities throughout the forest. Most importantly, she saw herself through their eyes, not as an invader or a threat, but as someone who had proven her character through actions rather than words. The parent was trying to understand her, to measure her worthiness not just as an individual, but as a representative of her species. The connection lasted only moments before the adult pulled back, leaving Maya gasping and disoriented. The three aliens moved away from her slightly and began communicating among themselves with musical sounds and what Maya realized were controlled telepathic exchanges. She could sense the edge of their conversation but couldn't understand the complex concepts they were sharing. The cub, meanwhile, had apparently been telling its own version of events. It kept looking between Maya and its parents, making excited sounds and occasionally touching Maya's hand with its paw. Maya got the distinct impression that the youngster was defending her, explaining not just what had happened but how it felt about the human who had saved its life. After several minutes of discussion, the three adults seemed to reach a consensus. The parent approached Maya again, moving slowly to avoid frightening her. When it was close enough, it gently touched its forehead to Maya's hand. The sensation was unlike anything Maya had ever experienced. Instead of the overwhelming flood of the previous contact, this was controlled and deliberate. The parent was sharing something specific, something important. Maya saw a hidden city in the trees, structures that seemed to grow from the crystal formations themselves. She saw hundreds of the alien beings living in harmony with their environment, their technology so advanced it seemed like magic to her human perspective. She understood that they had been aware of the human colony from the beginning, watching and evaluating these strange new inhabitants of their world. Most remarkably, she saw a gathering of the aliens, what seemed to be some kind of council or governing body. They had been debating what to do about the humans, whether to reveal themselves or remain hidden. The discussion had been going on for months, with some advocating for contact and others urging caution. Maya's rescue of the cub had changed everything. The parent was showing her that her actions had proven something vital about human nature to those who had been watching. She had demonstrated that humans could value alien life, that they were capable of selfless action even for beings they didn't understand. The parent pulled back from the mental contact and made a sound that was clearly a decision. The other two adults moved closer, and together they began walking deeper into the forest, constantly looking back to see if Maya would follow. The invitation was clear, but Maya hesitated. Following them meant abandoning everything she had been told about proper first contact protocols. It meant making decisions that could affect the entire human colony without any authority to do so. But looking down at the cub, which had moved to stand beside her with obvious trust and affection, Maya knew she had already crossed that line the moment she dove into the river. "All right," she said to the waiting aliens. "Show me your world." The journey deeper into the forest revealed wonders that Maya had never imagined. The crystal trees grew larger and more elaborate as they traveled, some reaching heights that seemed impossible. The aliens moved through this environment like they were part of it, finding paths that Maya couldn't see and avoiding obstacles with supernatural grace. After an hour of walking, they reached what Maya first thought was a particularly dense grove of trees. But as they drew closer, she realized she was looking at architecture. The structures were so perfectly integrated with the natural crystal formations that they seemed to have grown from the forest itself. Buildings spiraled up the trunks of massive trees, their walls translucent like the crystal but clearly artificial. Walkways stretched between the structures, creating a three-dimensional city that existed in harmony with the forest canopy. And everywhere Maya saw the aliens going about their daily lives, pausing to watch the strange procession that was bringing a human into their most sacred spaces. The parent led them to the base of the largest tree, where an opening that seemed to iris open like an eye awaited them. As they entered what was clearly the equivalent of a government building or council chamber, Maya realized that everything was about to change, not just for her, but for both species sharing this remarkable world. The cub stayed close to her side, its presence a reminder that sometimes the most profound changes in history begin with simple acts of kindness between strangers. Maya's research cabin sat nestled in a grove of crystalline trees, 3 kilometers from the main settlement. She had built it herself during her first year on Kepler 442b, using both human construction techniques and materials she had discovered on the planet. The walls were reinforced with local stone that seemed to regulate temperature naturally, keeping the interior cool during the day and warm at night. Inside the cabin, Maya gently placed the alien cub on a soft blanket near the heating unit. The small creature had remained alert during their journey, those intelligent violet eyes taking in everything around them. Now in the safety and warmth of the cabin, the cub began to relax, though it never took its gaze off Maya. "You must be hungry," Maya said softly, moving slowly to avoid startling her unexpected guest. She had no idea what the creature might eat, but she started with the basics. Fresh water in a shallow bowl, some of the native fruits she had determined were safe for human consumption, and even a small piece of the protein bars from her emergency supplies. The cub approached the water first, drinking delicately before examining the other offerings. It showed interest in the fruits but ignored the protein bar entirely. Maya made mental notes, already thinking like the xenobiologist she had trained to be before becoming a planetary surveyor. As the cub ate, Maya set up her portable scanner and began taking readings from a respectful distance. What she discovered defied everything she thought she knew about Kepler 442b's ecosystem. The creature's biological structure was unlike anything in the colonial databases. Its cellular composition suggested an evolutionary path completely separate from any known life forms. Yet it showed remarkable adaptations to the planet's environment. Most intriguing were the neural activity readings. The scanner detected brain patterns that indicated not just intelligence, but a level of cognitive complexity that rivaled human measurements. This wasn't just an animal. This was a person with thoughts, emotions, and possibly even a culture. The cub finished eating and began exploring the cabin with obvious curiosity. It examined Maya's equipment with the careful attention of a scientist, and when it encountered her tablet displaying star charts, it became particularly animated. The creature stood on its hind legs, placing its front paws on the table, and made a series of musical sounds while staring at the display. Maya's heart raced. "You recognize the stars, don't you?" she whispered. "You know what they are." The cub looked directly at her and made that warm humming sound again. This time, the sensation Maya felt was even stronger. Images flashed in her mind, not her own memories, but something else entirely. She saw the forest from above, as if flying through the canopy. She glimpsed structures hidden among the trees, beautiful and organic, unlike anything humans had built. And she felt emotions, complex and nuanced, that spoke of family, community, and love. Maya staggered backward, her scientific mind reeling. "You're telepathic," she breathed. "You're trying to communicate with me." The connection lasted only a few seconds, but it changed everything. Maya realized she wasn't just harboring an alien animal. She was in the presence of a member of an intelligent species that lived on this planet, a species that the human colony had been completely unaware of for 3 years. As evening approached, the cub became restless. It moved to the window and stood on its hind legs, looking out at the darkening forest. The musical sounds it made became more urgent, almost mournful. Maya understood immediately. The telepathic connection had created a bridge between them that allowed her to sense the creature's emotions. "You want to go home," Maya said. "Your family is looking for you." The cub turned to her, and Maya felt a complex mix of emotions from the small being. Gratitude for her rescue, affection for her kindness, but also deep concern for its family. They were probably terrified, searching everywhere for their lost child. Maya faced a dilemma that would have staggered the Colonial Council. She had made first contact with an alien intelligence, but it was a child separated from its family. Every protocol said she should alert the authorities immediately, but every instinct told her that bringing government officials into this situation could turn a miraculous discovery into a tragedy. She knelt beside the cub, gently stroking its iridescent fur. "I want to help you get home," she said, "but I don't know where your family is or how to find them." The cub pressed against her hand, and suddenly Maya's mind filled with images again. She saw the forest path they had taken to reach the cabin, but from the cub's perspective. She felt directions, not in terms of north and south, but in terms of scent trails, sound patterns, and something else she couldn't quite understand. "You're trying to show me the way," Maya realized. "You want me to take you home?" The response was immediate and overwhelming. Joy, hope, and trust flooded through their connection. The cub wanted her to meet its family, to be the bridge between their two species. Maya spent the night beside the cub, both of them dozing fitfully. She dreamed of soaring through the crystal forest, of hidden cities in the trees, of a civilization that had watched the human colonists arrive and wondered what these strange beings intended. She saw herself through alien eyes, not as a conqueror or invader, but as someone who had risked her life to save a child. When dawn broke, Maya had made her decision. She would return the cub to its family, regardless of the consequences. This wasn't about protocols or career advancement. It was about doing what was right for a frightened child and its parents. She gathered supplies for a longer journey into the unexplored forest: food, water, her emergency beacon, and her portable scanner. She also included gifts, items that might interest an intelligent alien species, her tablet with its star charts since the cub had shown such interest, some samples of human art and music stored in her data files, and practical items like medical supplies and tools, things that might demonstrate human goodwill and usefulness. The cub seemed to understand her preparations and became increasingly excited. It moved constantly between Maya and the door, clearly eager to begin the journey home. When Maya finally shouldered her pack and opened the cabin door, the cub bounded outside and immediately began moving toward the deeper forest. As they walked together through the crystalline trees, Maya couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Occasionally, she caught glimpses of movement in the upper canopy, too quick and too large to be any animal she knew. The scanner picked up life signs, multiple contacts that seemed to parallel their movement through the forest. The cub's family was following them, Maya realized. They had probably been nearby all along, watching and waiting to see what the strange human would do with their child. The thought both thrilled and terrified her. First contact was happening whether she was ready for it or not. 3 hours into their journey, the cub suddenly stopped and made a sound unlike any it had produced before. It was answered immediately by similar calls from the forest around them. Maya's heart pounded as she realized they had reached the moment that would define the future relationship between humans and the native species of Kepler 442b. Maya Chen had always been different from other colonists on Kepler 442b. While most humans stayed within the safety of New Eden's protective barriers, she ventured into the untamed wilderness that stretched beyond their settlement. The planet's twin suns cast an amber glow across the crystalline forests, where trees grew like living glass and reflected light in mesmerizing patterns. On this particular morning, Maya was collecting water samples from the Jara River, a pristine waterway that flowed from the northern mountains toward the vast Meridian Ocean. The research station had sent her to test for mineral content, but Maya loved these solo expeditions for reasons beyond scientific duty. Out here, away from the constant hum of generators and the nervous chatter of fellow colonists, she could think clearly. The river moved swiftly this time of year, swollen with snowmelt from the peaks. Maya knelt beside a calm eddy, filling her collection vials when she heard something that made her blood freeze. A high-pitched cry, desperate and terrified, echoed from downstream. Maya's head snapped up, scanning the riverbank. The sound came again, weaker this time. Without hesitation, she abandoned her equipment and sprinted toward the noise, her boots splashing through shallow pools and crunching on the peculiar blue-green grass that carpeted the riverbank. What she found nearly stopped her heart. A small creature no larger than a house cat thrashed frantically in the middle of the river. The current had caught it in a deadly embrace, dragging it toward a series of jagged rocks that would surely crush its delicate frame. Maya had never seen anything like it before. The creature possessed the general body shape of a leopard cub, but its fur shimmered with an otherworldly iridescence, shifting from deep purple to silver as it moved. Most striking were its eyes, large and intelligent, a brilliant shade of violet that seemed to glow with their own inner light. Maya didn't waste time wondering what kind of animal this was or whether it might be dangerous. Every instinct in her body screamed that this was a sentient being in mortal peril. She kicked off her boots and dove into the icy water without a second thought. The current immediately seized her, threatening to dash her against the same rocks that endangered the creature. Maya was a strong swimmer, but the river fought her with every stroke. The water was so cold it felt like liquid fire in her lungs, and the current seemed almost alive in its determination to claim both of them. The young alien had stopped struggling, its energy spent. It floated limply, only its head above water. Those remarkable violet eyes fixed on Maya with an expression she could only describe as hope mixed with resignation. Maya pushed herself harder, her muscles screaming in protest as she fought against the merciless flow. Just as the creature began to slip beneath the surface, Maya's fingers closed around its scruff. The moment she touched it, something extraordinary happened. A warm sensation flowed between them, and Maya felt a brief, overwhelming sense of gratitude and intelligence from the small being. This was no ordinary animal. This was someone, not something. Getting to shore proved even more challenging than reaching the creature. Maya had to swim one-handed while supporting the alien's weight, all while the current tried to sweep them both toward the rocks. Her lungs burned and her vision blurred, but she refused to give up. Images flashed through her mind of her younger brother back on Earth, how she had always protected him, how she had never been able to save him from the plague that took so many children before the exodus to Kepler 442b. With a final desperate surge of strength, Maya reached a fallen log that extended into the water. She hauled herself and the creature onto its rough bark, both of them gasping and shivering. The alien cub lay motionless for several terrifying seconds before coughing up river water and opening those incredible violet eyes. Maya gently stroked the creature's wet fur, marveling at how soft it felt despite its alien nature. Up close, she could see that its markings weren't random spots like a terrestrial leopard, but intricate patterns that seemed almost like writing. The cub made a soft sound, somewhere between a purr and a musical hum, and nuzzled against Maya's hand. "You're going to be okay," Maya whispered, though she had no idea if the creature could understand her words. "I've got you now." As if in response, the cub's eyes brightened and Maya felt that strange warm sensation again. For just a moment, she could have sworn she sensed the creature's thoughts. Feelings of safety and overwhelming gratitude directed toward her. Maya looked around, realizing she had no idea where this cub had come from or where its family might be. The forests of Kepler 442b were largely unexplored, and the colonial surveys had found no evidence of intelligent life. Yet everything about this small being suggested high intelligence and possibly even civilization. She carefully lifted the cub, surprised by how light it was despite its solid appearance. Its fur was already beginning to dry, revealing the full spectrum of its color-shifting properties. In direct sunlight, it looked like living starlight, beautiful beyond description. Maya knew she should report this discovery immediately. First contact with an alien species was exactly the kind of event that colonial protocols demanded be handled by the proper authorities. But looking down at the small, trusting creature in her arms, Maya felt a protective instinct stronger than any regulation. The cub had nearly died, and Maya had risked her own life to save it. That created a bond, a responsibility she wasn't ready to hand over to bureaucrats and scientists who might see this remarkable being as nothing more than a specimen to be studied. Maya made a decision that would change everything for both species. Instead of heading back to New Eden immediately, she would take the cub to her remote research cabin, make sure it was healthy and safe, and try to figure out where it belonged. Only then would she decide what to do next. As she walked through the crystal forest with the alien cub cradled against her chest, Maya had no idea that her act of compassion had been witnessed. High in the canopy above, several pairs of violet eyes watched her every move, and in the distance a sound like singing echoed through the trees. The cub's family had been searching, and they had seen everything,